The Red Web, Chapter 15, Consequences. The Enforcer Precinct was tense. Lau had been doing his best to prepare for war, fortifying the building, collecting supplies. He'd pulled back routine patrols to focus more on taking out dissident cells, but intelligence had started drying up, and the sources along with it. A report on his desk detailed 2 informants fished out of the sump a few days earlier, adding to the pile. Some just disappeared. With their network on full-on retreat, he found himself without better options and called a meeting with the head of the local Delac information vendors. He dealt with the strange, gaunt man a few times before when specialized intelligence was needed. He didn't trust them, no one did, and their house seemed to revel in paranoia, feeding into everyone's mistrust, but still, they were rigorous collectors of information and had, up to that point, seemed to put the interests of the Imperial House first. The office went silent as the tall humanoid form crossed the threshold. His eyes were missing, replaced with 2 permanently embedded lenses. He wore a floor-length trench coat, the Emperor's knows what inside of it. He'd been scanned for weapons upon entry, but trusting the Delac was clean was a good way of getting a knife in your back. He and one of his sergeants went into the precinct room, taking a seat. The Delac, from their communications, was seemingly known as OY97-PQ. He set up a small signal jammer, insisting the conference room's built-in one was of inferior quality. Once they were secure, he sat down and said simply, "What is it that you need of me, Captain?" "Well, as I'm sure you know, my informants have been turning up dead." "Yes, and a few in the wind at that. It's a shame. Hivers used to respect the job of information collection and distribution. Now they want secrecy. Everyone seems to be plotting." "Ironic that you'd have a problem with secrecy. You lot love hiding your little secrets away." "The difference is that we know enough to know what is in the interest of the Hive, so that is the work that we do. Now, you seem to need assistance. But what are you looking for?" "Well, I don't have eyes on the ground anymore. I need regular human intel reports to spot anything big coming, and I need infiltration of the networks of dissenters." "Ah, yes, well, I can already tell you, I don't have exactly what you want, but I have what you need. Your problems go far deeper than being blind to events on the ground. You have officers making deals with the rebels. One handed over tactical data on the dome's defenses to a particularly inflammatory Goliath gang just a few days ago. By the throne, why didn't you come to us sooner?" "Why didn't you reach out sooner? Things happen when they happen, Captain." "Do you have the names?" "Sadly, no. My information is secondhand, from inside the insurgent cell. There isn't enough information yet to know who was the source, but you should guard yourself very carefully. If your officers are selling you out, then things are much worse than we had anticipated. It's very likely violence will begin at any moment." Almost as though on cue, Lieutenant Bolivar drew his sidearm and squeezed off a number of shots with the Delac fighter, turning to hold his gun on the captain before realizing the bullets had not met their target. A displacer field embedded in the Delac's trench coat had thrown him clear of the shots, and he had a carbon fiber blade in the lieutenant's throat before he could fire another bullet. Lau was stunned. I fight for these men. I bleed for them. What would inspire this?" "Words, Captain. Simple words, at once the least and most dangerous thing in the Hive. You understand now why I wanted my own protection from observation?" Yes, I can't believe it. Bolivar was a good man, a razor. I've seen him march into harm's way countless times. If he turned, any of them could have." "Yes, and they now know I'm here, which means the moment we open that door, it may mean war. Are you ready, Captain? We may need to fight our way out." Nodding, Lau drew the bolt pistol on his hip. It was overkill for police work, but he'd taken to carrying it since reinstatement, as the gun intimidated even the hardest of foes. Something about a large caliber round detonating in your chest cavity filled the Hivers with fear. But out here, he didn't know what they'd face. He readied himself, signaled Delac, and they opened the door. The soundproofing had seemingly muffled the gunshots. The rest of the precinct seemed busy, so Lau made to quickly cross the bullpen. He made it about halfway down the aisle before the first shot was fired. The Delac was again the target, his displacer field throwing him clear, but sprawling onto a desk. Lau fired a single bolt into the officer, penetrating his armor and blowing him into chunks of meat. The shockwave sent desks and cabinets tumbling, papers floating in the smoke, lighting damaged by the concussion wave, flickering. Delac was back on his feet, a pistol in his hand. One of your officers was irresponsible with his firearm, Captain. They sought to teach him a lesson about leaving it unsecured. There'll be time for wit later. The door, now! They crouched and moved along the row of desks, shots coming as they crossed the open space. There was crossfire as officers, unaware of what was going on, returned fire against the unknown foes. Lau shouted to them, "Officers have betrayed the Imperial House. Trust no one. Get to safety and I will find you. The law prevails." He dashed towards the door, entering the hallway that leads to the precinct entrance. One of his men stood at the scanner, gun drawn. He shouted, "Boss man, what's going down?" Lau replied, "Officers have betrayed their vows. I need you to cover our retreat, then get clear. We don't know who we can trust." Lau waited a moment to see if this man was really his man, expecting another bout of violence, but he simply nodded and trained his shotgun on the doorway. Thank the Emperor for small favors. As they reached the antechamber and the precinct front door, gunshots rung out from behind them, the grunt of a bullet finding its mark, though who had been shot was not clear as the door shut behind them. Opening the front door, they spilled out into the dome. Lau took a step and then saw him, one of his subjugators in full armor. "Lau!" he shouted, pointing his baton at the captain. "We're taking over the precinct. It's time for you to retire." "I'm not going anywhere, Mullins. I'm right here. If you got a problem, then let's settle it." Lau had lost track of the Delac, his focus instead on the immediate threat. Glancing around, he didn't see them anywhere. Good, at least one of them might survive this. Mullins charged him, shield up, deflecting the bolts Lau squeezed off, swinging his shock baton. Lau ducked. He was comfortable fighting with the heavily armored subjugators, their attacks limited by the shield and thus highly predictable. Unfortunately, they were also extremely hard to hurt, the armor covering most of their traditional weak points. Lau drew a knife in his offhand, keeping the bolt pistol trained and waiting for an opportunity. Another attack. On the swing, the foe opened his inside, the perfect place to unload a bolt, but at this range the shockwave knocked both of them to the ground. It had failed to penetrate the armor, but the subjugator's shoulder was broken, and he had a concussion. He wouldn't get the chance to recover, however, as Delac reemerged from the shadows, plunging his blade into the prone officer's neck. Lau was dazed. Shrapnel had peppered his armor and left a deep gash in his face. He sat up, looking at Delac, arms out to help him. "We need to make haste, Captain. I have a safe house." "Just one question. Why are you helping me?" "Because I serve House Helmar, Captain." "And your kin, OY97-PQ? "In the coming days, they will each have to make a choice. I cannot say where they will all land." "Oh, and Captain?" "Yes?" "My call sign is Peak. If we're going to be working together, you can call me that."